Get ready to be surprised by a groundbreaking proposal put forth by an Israeli lawmaker. This controversial plan has sparked heated debates and raised eyebrows worldwide. Are you ready to unravel the details and explore the potential implications? Let's dive in and discover the astonishing proposal that has everyone talking. The Temple Mount holds great significance in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Also known as the Mount of the House, it is in the Old City of Jerusalem. This sacred site has a rich history that spans thousands of years. Originally, the Temple Mount was a flat plaza with retaining walls built by King Herod in the 1st century BCE to expand the Second Jewish Temple. Today, it is dominated by two impressive structures, the al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. These structures were built during the Rashidun and early Umayyad caliphates in the 7th century CE. The Dome of the Rock, completed in 692 CE, is one of the oldest Islamic structures. The Temple Mount is believed to have been the location of past Jewish temples. According to Jewish tradition, the first temple was built by King Solomon in 957 BCE, and the second temple was constructed under Zerubbabel in 516 BCE. The second temple was later renovated by King Herod, but was ultimately destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE. Orthodox Jewish tradition holds that the third and final temple will be built here when the Messiah comes. For Jews, the Temple Mount is the holiest site. However, due to its extreme sanctity, many Jews refrain from walking on the mount to avoid entering the area where the Holy of Holies stood. They believe that some aspect of the divine presence remains at the site. In Islam, the entire plaza is revered as the noble sanctuary, or the al-Aqsa Mosque. It is the second oldest mosque in Islam and one of the three holiest sites. The courtyard can accommodate over 400,000 worshippers, making it one of the largest mosques in the world. Muslims associate the site with Prophet Muhammad's ascension to heaven and consider it a central place of worship. Since the Crusades, the Muslim community in Jerusalem has managed the site through the Jerusalem Islamic Waqf. After the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel gained control over the Temple Mount, but returned its administration to the Waqf while maintaining security control. Non-Muslims are not allowed to pray there, per the status quo arrangement enforced by the Israeli government. The Temple Mount remains a significant point of contention in the Arab-Israeli conflict and continues to shape the religious and political landscape of the region. Status quo on Temple Mount. The status quo at the Temple Mount has been complex and contentious. For nearly 1,000 years, Jews were not allowed to visit the Temple Mount. Access was restricted, and the status quo favored Muslim control. Later, from 1917 to 1948, all people were allowed entry to the Temple Mount during the British Mandate period. However, conflicts sometimes erupted between Jews and Muslims at the entrance. After the 1929 Palestine riots, Jews were prohibited from entering the site's gates. This ban lasted until 1948. Following the 1949 Armistice Agreement, which aimed to resist normal cultural and humanitarian activities, wire and concrete barriers were set up, restricting access to cultural and religious sites. The Jewish community was barred from their sacred places, and neglect and destruction of sites occurred. After the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel gained control over the Temple Mount. Moshe Dayan, then Israeli Minister of Defense, met with Muslim religious authorities to establish a new status quo. Jews were granted the right to visit the Temple Mount, but were not allowed to pray there. The Western Wall remained the main Jewish place of prayer. Over the years, attempts were made to change the status quo, allowing Jewish prayer on the Temple Mount. However, these attempts were met with opposition and were unsuccessful. Police continued to forbid Jews from praying on the site. Visits by non-Muslims, including Jews, are often restricted, and visits inside the mosques are not allowed. Jews with religious appearances must visit monitored groups. Many Palestinians believe the status quo is threatened, as some right-wing Israelis challenge it and assert a religious right to pray there. Courts have sometimes overturned bans on individuals caught praying quietly on the Temple Mount. These rulings have sparked tensions and accusations, with Hamas considering them a declaration of war. The status quo at the Temple Mount remains a delicate and hotly debated issue, with ongoing tensions and conflicts surrounding access, prayer, and site control. Israeli MK proposes dividing Temple Mount between Jews and Muslims. MK Amit Halevi of the Likud party suggests dividing Jerusalem's Temple Mount between Muslims and Jews and removing Jordan's custodial status over the holy site, as the Zaman Yisrael Hebrew news site reported. According to Halevi's plan, Muslims would control the southern portion of the 37-acre complex, specifically the area where the al-Aqsa Mosque is located. On the other hand, Jews would receive the central and northern areas where the Dome of the Rock sits. Halevi argues that this division aligns with religious beliefs, as the Jewish faith considers the northern section of the Temple Mount to be the holiest site. According to Jewish sources, the first and second temples once stood there, and the foundation stone at the center of the Dome of the Rock is considered the Holy of Holies. This is the place of the first temple and the place of the second temple, built by Babylonian immigrants. No one needs to examine the stones to know that it is ours, Halevi emphasized. Furthermore, Halevi seeks to terminate Israel's agreement with the Jordanian Waqf, which grants the Islamic trust control and management over Islamic structures on the Temple Mount. Why not give them status in the Dizengoff Center as well? This is a terrible mistake. This status should be abolished. I know it's an agreement between countries, but we must deal with it. It requires change, even if the process will take time, he insisted. Additionally, Halevi proposes granting Jews equal access to the Temple Mount, similar to what Muslims enjoy. Presently, the Waqf only permits Jews and non-Muslim tourists to enter through the Maghribi Gate, and even then only during specific hours when the gate is open. We will take the northern end and pray there. The entire mountain is sacred to us, and the Dome of the Rock is where the temple stood. This should be our guideline, Halevi expressed. Israel is leading. It will be a historical, religious, and national statement. If this does not happen, you are not the house owner. You are a klutz. Why are you even going in there? This could lead to a religious war. The recent proposal to divide Jerusalem's Temple Mount between Muslims and Jews faces strong opposition from the Palestinian Authority. Palestinians are condemning the proposal, with some warning that it could spark a religious war. Politicians from Jordan and Egypt and Muslim clerics have also voiced their concerns and cautioned against dividing the Temple Mount, highlighting the potentially serious consequences. The Supreme Muslim Council in East Jerusalem strongly opposes any plan to divide the Temple Mount, considering it dangerous and a potential loss of the al-Aqsa Mosque. They emphasize their firm opposition to ending Jordan's role as the custodian of the holy sites in Jerusalem and call for preventing Jews from entering the mosque. They assert that the Aqsa Mosque is a red line that should not be crossed. The Palestinian Authority Ministry for Jerusalem Affairs denounces the discussions about dividing the Temple Mount as very dangerous and warns that it could lead to a religious war. They criticize the plan proposed by a member of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's party, Likud, as a direct insult to the sentiments of all Muslims. They argue that implementing such a plan would undoubtedly result in a religious war. Armed factions in the Gaza Strip join the opposition, warning against any attempt to divide the Temple Mount. They consider it a declaration of war and anticipate an explosive response. The factions express their determination to resist such aggression and emphasize their readiness to make sacrifices. The strong opposition from the Palestinian Authority, Muslim organizations, and armed factions highlights the deep concern and resistance towards the proposal to divide the Temple Mount, reflecting the potential for escalated regional tensions and conflicts. Why did the dividing thing come to mind? Despite its religious importance to Christians, Jews, and Muslims, Christians and Jews are currently prohibited from praying at the Temple Mount due to concerns about provoking a strong reaction from the Muslim world. As stated, the status quo policy has traditionally prevented non-Muslims from entering the Temple Mount complex during the last 10 days of Ramadan, when Muslim worshippers stay overnight at the site they call the Al-Aqsa Mosque, or Noble Sanctuary. In December, King Abdullah II of Jordan cautioned the incoming Netanyahu-led government against changing the red lines of the status quo concerning Jerusalem's holy sites. He also expressed fears of a possible Palestinian uprising known as an intifada if any modifications were made. In January, the international community criticized the Israeli government when National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir visited the Temple Mount. So, What do you think of dividing the Temple Mount? Comment below and subscribe for more such videos.